live? Hang on. Let me just check. I think we're live. No, we're not. It's Oh my god, I think it's working. Okay, yes!
We're live!
No, not yet, but in a second.
Sales pipelines.
Alright, I'll turn the volume down on the watch page. Okay, fantastic. Oh, thank God for pub test. Okay, good. Alright. Okay, they can see us. Yay! Alright, we're side by side, so no more hangouts. I'm so glad. Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to my regular 8:15 or now 8:22 p.m. Live stream. I'm so sorry for being technologically retarded, but I have a fabulous guest today, and actually an entertaining as well, Kyle, because you came in very last minute when my former guest had to pull out due to family reasons. So thank you so much, Kyle. Kutasi.
I don't mind being sloppy seconds. It's okay. I've helped you out.
No, it's really, really good. I'm actually really excited to talk to you. But before we begin everything, you know, do you have a Japanese father?
No, the name's Hungarian, but you would be surprised how many people think the name's Japanese. Until you meet me, of course, and you realise I don't look very Japanese, do I?
You could pass for half, who knows?
Well, albino Japanese.
Perhaps. Well, no, I've been really excited to talk to you because there's music in the background. Is there?
Not from me, not from my end. No.
Not from mine. Maybe it's, hang on, let me check. Is it my stream glass? Give me a sec, everyone. Alright. Is that better, everyone? I've done what I can. Anyway. Oh yeah, they can hear the rave music. Okay, I've turned it down now. Sorry, everyone. Have I turned it down?
Have you got a rave going in your house?
No, I think what it is because I don't have a rave going in my house, but the music I have is it stopped. Okay, good, never mind. I don't have a rave going, but it's the music I use at the very end of all of the videos that I edit. And I must have had it playing in the background and I didn't even realise. Okay, so now I'm aware. Thanks guys for bearing with me with this new system of going live. Okay. So echo, I can't fix the echo, guys. Oh my god, they're getting really picky now. I even have a freaking headphone in and a mic. Like I don't ever do this. Okay. So Kyle, back to you. You are very much a man of different talents. Or none. Tell us a little bit about your time, first of all, in you used to be in the Liberal Party. And how was that experience? Or you were part of the Young Liberals?
Well, yeah, I technically am still a member.
Okay.
Not that I put any time or effort into it at all. I was the Vice President of Young Liberals in New South Wales in 2003. It was an interesting experience. Built myself a level of notoriety for my time there, and Well, what do you want to know about it, I suppose?
So I thought you left, but you haven't left. You're technically still a member?
Well, yeah, I did leave for a period. Basically, how do I put this? When I joined, very, very, very strong believer in conservative values, still am, and we'll talk about what conservative means, I suppose, later, but I thought the way of changing the world was, getting involved in politics and changing things by, getting good people into Parliament. And for a period of time, that went well. A group of us did very well. We took over the Young Liberals, eventually took over the senior party. And then that was about 2004. And then within a year, I just saw the people that we got elected into positions just using their votes to get themselves elected to their own sinecures. And when I started seeing lefty members of Parliament getting elected by right-wing votes, I thought, what the hell am I doing? At exactly the same time that was going on, I got married, I finished uni, I had an opportunity to go and start a career in the law, and also then I also came under fire for a period of time for accused of breaching some party rules. So I just went, you know what, forget it. I can't be interested in this anymore, and I walked away from it. And to be honest, it's the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, walking away from the Liberal Party.
Yeah. It's a waste of time.
There is a lot of internal politics within the party. I think there's a lot of leftists in there and a lot of right wing in there, and so they sort of can't figure each other out. And I think I think they're trying to navigate that.
Well, the thing is, what do you call a right winger? I mean, if you ask most people out there, they'll say Tony Abbott. Tony Abbott's the most left wing member of Parliament I've ever known. So I mean, you know, it's what's the point? You're just getting people like him elected to do what? So when he's Prime Minister again, he can, you know, introduce welfare schemes and increase taxes. Totally pointless activity, you know. So yeah, you know, I don't waste my time on active membership of political parties anymore. It's you know, and back then I wasn't a Christian either, dear, and now I am, and I think that you're more likely to change the world through, you know, promotion of the gospel now than you will through trying to change laws.
Yes, but unfortunately, the Christian rights are getting slowly stripped away.
Well, that might not necessarily be a terribly bad thing, but that's a conversation we can have.
Yeah. Well, you entered into industrial relations.
Yeah.
So why of all the types of laws that exist? Because I was actually studying for a long time to be a paralegal. I was doing an advanced diploma to become a paralegal or you know, senior secretary or something like that. Anyway, so everyone in the chat is saying that my audio is really bad and I don't know how to fix it. So you guys, I don't know how to use the system. I'm learning. So if you can bear with me, I don't know where to go or what to do. So I can't really change it. They're saying maybe I should just take out my headphone and my microphone. Would that be better? Yeah, I really don't know how to fix it, so... Is that better? Is that better? Hang on. Is that better? Can you hear me? It's not unintelligible. Well, that's good. I'm sorry, I'm Kyle. It's not usually this.
Is it just your audio or both of us?
You're fine. Apparently you don't have an echo. It's just me. It's not better. Okay. I'll take out my...
I can tell from where I am, I can hear you without an echo.
I know you can hear me without an echo. I know. That's why I'm wondering why your guest probably needs headphones. My guest, I can hear him though. Okay, so I don't know. There's no one agrees. Hang on, I can't even. This is weird. Anyway, look, guys, I can't fix it.
The features of live television, huh?
Yeah, I've taken it off. I've taken it out. Apparently you're echoing now that I've taken off my. That's worse.
Oh. I do have a set of earphones. I can plug them in.
Try it.
Okay.
Sorry. You both need headphones. I don't know who to believe.
Now I can't find them. Sorry about that.
You can't find them?
No.
Okay.
No.
It's not bad. Just do the interview, we can hear you. Okay, Margot is my moderator. And she's saying, Margot, is it better now that I've put in my headphones? I don't know. Anyway, okay. I'm not that I'm trying to be rude or ignore the chat. I want to get on with the interview. I want to talk to Kyle. I want to get to know him, even though I already kind of do now. Okay, cool. So, why did you step into industrial law? Because to most people, that tends to sound like a boring a boring subject matter. I know it isn't. I know that there's so many facets to it. But you chose to step into industrial law. Do you want to explain what industrial relations? Do you want to explain what that is and why you stepped into that world?
Yeah, sure. So, firstly, one of the reasons was it was just the first job I managed to get out of university. So
why not?
But I wasn't unhappy getting into that area. I grew up in my parents' small business. They were food manufacturers, and there was a lot of interaction there with employee relations, fighting off unions, that kind of stuff. And so I always, I guess, came from that background where I was very pro-employer, and still am to a degree.
Yeah,
and,
too many rights are given to employees. We should strip them of every right.
No, it's not. No, not
kidding.
at all.
No, I was joking, dude.
No, my view, totally. My view is that I don't believe in industrial law. So, I mean, I don't really believe in most regulation, full stop. But I don't think it should be anything but a contract between employer and employee. And if the employer wants to terminate the employment relationship, they can terminate the employment relationship. If the employee wants to leave, as they currently do, they can leave. And everything in between is acceptable. Now, you don't need... The CEO of Channel 9 doesn't need unfair dismissal laws. He doesn't need to be protected from dismissal. So why does anyone else? I don't understand, as a general concept, why we need to protect people from being fired.
Because you are more special in this world if you are transgendered. You are more
well,
how's that for a response?
I identify as a woman, Diet. So,
okay.
So how do you... Yeah. I'm a lesbian trapped in a man's body.
What does your wife think about that?
Well, all the better. She's a gay man trapped in a woman's body.
Well, there's so many... The thing is, though, like, minorities want to be protected. Like, that's the thing. Minorities do feel like they need to be protected because they're special. Now, the only people who are not special but who do need additional, I would say, care would be someone who happens to be maybe deaf. You would need to have different types of things there to help, like they can't see the phone, they can't hear a phone ringing, but they can see a light flashing, something like that. That's slightly different, but generally speaking, we all have the same capabilities. So,
but if let's say you are a deaf person,
sure,
and you're able to do your job,
yeah,
and your employer wants to get rid of you because they don't like the fact that you're deaf. That's a pretty irrational thing to do. And do you really want to work for that person if that's their attitude? Why don't you go and work for someone else? This stuff would arbitrage itself out if you just allowed it to arbitrage itself out.
So what about political ideology or religion? How do you personally, how do you, from a legal perspective, argue that?
Well, do you want to go straight to the obvious elephant in the room, the Falau case? Do you want to go? Well, we can go straight there. In a perfect world, Rugby Australia should be entitled to fire anyone they want for whatever reason they want to do it. Right? From that perspective, I think morally they're entitled to do what they did to him. Morally, they're entitled. However, it doesn't mean they should do that, and you should never.
So morally, they're entitled, not legally.
Correct, but we'll get to the legal side. Yeah. Okay. But they shouldn't want to do that. I would never fire someone on the basis of their religious beliefs. I wouldn't fire someone on the basis of their non-religious beliefs. And Rugby Australia really, it's not a religious organisation. So what business does it have firing people because of their views on anything really? They didn't care about David Pocock chaining himself to trees. So why do they care about Israel Folau posting scripture on Twitter? But nonetheless,
Instagram.
What we do, however, have a Fair Work Act, and it does have protections against terminating people on the basis of sex, gender, political views, religious views, etc. We do have that in Australia, and so I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of the Falau case. I haven't read his contract. I don't know any of that stuff, but it does seem to me that he was fired because he posted scripture on Twitter, and it's hard to see how Rugby Australia gets around that. We live in a terrible world where silly things like this happen.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. And so are these things that you have personally dealt with because you are the president of the HR Society, is that correct?
HR Nichols, yes.
HR Nichols Society. Tell everyone about that because that's something that started here in Victoria, in Melbourne.
It did.
Yeah. So, see, I did my research.
Anyone under the age of... What's happened there? Hello?
I can hear you. Hello? Hello? Oh my gosh. Hello? It froze. Hang on, everyone. Hello? Poor network connection. Okay, so let's try again. Hello?
Hey, I'm back. I don't know what happened there.
Neither
It
do
just
I.
disappeared.
It's on your end. It stopped. On my end, it seemed okay. But I don't know how to get you back into the stream with this new phone call. Oh wait, it's already. Well, I can see you here. I don't know if they can see you. Hang on. I can stay because I have. Oh, okay. Hang on. Laura, I don't know what's happening. It's a conspiracy, they're saying. Hang on, let me refresh it. I don't know if we're back. I'll just refresh it. This is so weird. I've never had this many problems. What are you doing to me? Hang on.
It's YouTube censors and...
Probably. They know how much the left hates you.
Well, probably more so you.
Oh, the left hates me more, but the thing is, you've had a hit piece written about you by Slack Bastard. I have only been referenced.
I had a book written about me.
Oh, you did? You had a book?
Yeah, well, yeah, you want to go down there, yeah.
Okay, let's talk
in the
about...
time in the Liberals.
Alright. Well, we're back live. Apparently they can hear us, and apparently the echo is also gone, so that's good. So HR Nichols Society, why, it's not a paid position, I imagine, so why are you part of it? Why have you chosen to do that, and what are they about?
I certainly don't get paid. I can, yeah. So look, it's hard for a lot of people under the age of about 40 today to understand in Australia. But in the 70s and 80s, there was an enormous amount of industrial disputation. It was a very, very regulated society. Everyone was under awards. You didn't have collective agreements. It was very rigid, and unions had something like 60-70% of Australians were members of unions, not because they wanted to be, but because they were forced to. Close shop laws and things like that, and it made Australia very, very uncompetitive. You had what was called stagflation in the late 70s. Even the Labor Party realised it wasn't working. It was Bob Hawke who introduced the Accords as a way of trying to smash the centralised wage fixing because it just wasn't suiting Australia. And credit to the Labor Party for doing that. But one of the problems, it popped up in a number of cases. I don't know if you've heard of the wide combs dispute, where shearers refused to use wide combs because it meant that they'd shear more sheep in an hour, and that therefore meant that they were more productive, and so they went on strike to stop themselves from being more productive. There was fights in the National Farmers Federation over the rates, the pace at which people would work in abattoirs, how many pigs they could debone in an hour, things like that, and eventually came to a head at Robe River. It was a mine in Western Australia where they went on strike over flavours of ice cream in a canteen. And eventually a few industrialists, in particular in Victoria, said enough's enough. They called a conference in 1986 called Arbitration in Contempt, and it was attended by about 500 people, including Peter Costello, John Stone, Ray Evans, and they founded the HR Nichols Society. Okay. And it was to lobby for changes to deregulate the labour market. And to a large degree, not completely, but to a large degree, my predecessors succeeded. But a lot of people think that we've done enough, or it's time to stop, and we don't agree. We think there's a long way to go There's still a lot of industrial regulation in Australia. We may be a lot more productive than we were 30 years ago, but there's still a lot that's holding us back. We have the highest minimum wage in the world. It's just one example.
Okay. Well, I had obviously spoken. It's a good segue because we were speaking on the phone earlier, and I'm working on a video about the El Paso shooting. And one of the points that the shooter made was about UBI, which is universal.
Basic income.
Sorry, yeah, basic income.
Not UTI.
It's not a UTI. Yeah, I've had that.
Well, I don't need to know about that.
You mentioned it. Very inappropriate jokes for two Christians. Anyway, so I wanted your assistance to help me with my script because I think that the fact that people think a universal basic income, which is a set pay rate, is somehow going to fix the problems of poverty is flawed thinking, and it's actually very much a leftist ideal. And did you want to sort of expand on why you think that's actually really stupid, and what would be a better solution than the UBI, not T?
Yes, I'd love to talk about the universal basic income.
Yeah, so the concept, it's a good subject.
The concept of universal basic income is that instead of having welfare, what we do is we give every single person, and that doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter whether you're making $1 million a year or nothing, you give everyone, say, $10,000 a year. So it's enough that they can survive on if they don't work. If they choose not to work, then, well, that's what they get. They don't get anything else. So the idea behind it is it's a more efficient way of handing out welfare, because instead of having hundreds of thousands of employees working through the many tens of thousands of programs that we have in Australia, and processing them and doing paperwork and all that stuff that takes up a lot of time, you just simply give everyone an amount of money and you say, there you go, there's your welfare, and you raise enough taxes to cover that. And keeping in mind that welfare payments make up something like 25-30% of the budget, then you've dealt very, very quickly with a large portion of the budget. And that's it. That's the concept behind it. But underlies what underlies UBI is the idea that you would abolish all other welfare programs in order to have a universal basic income.
Theoretically.
Theoretically, that's correct, right? And the reality is that's just never going to happen in real life. It's never going to happen. You can't imagine the way of Australian politics works. You can't have a situation where you're going to come along to someone, because a lot of people earn a lot more than $10,000 a year in welfare payments. So using that number, whether it's $10,000, whether it's $20,000, whether it's 25, whatever the number is, there's always going to be people worse off as a consequence of the introduction of a UBI. So what do you do with those people? Do you say, well, that's bad luck?
You deport them.
Well, sorry, sir?
I said deport them.
Deport them. Well, they may well.
I'm allowed to say that. I'm Hispanic. Sorry, keep going.
It's all right. It's fine. I don't mind. I like political incorrectness there. So yeah, what do you do? Well, the reality is that the way politics works is those people are almost always going to be protected in some way. There's going to be a grandfathering of their welfare provisions, or they're going to be programs that get left behind. So the political reality is that a UBI just leads to a great big new welfare program. It doesn't lead to a rationalisation of the welfare system. But then you've got the moral factor on top of that, which is, well, just think of how dangerous it is to pay people to do nothing. It has a very, very corrosive effect, and you end up in a situation which we basically now have in Australia in any event, where there's people, many people, in fact I'd say now maybe the majority, have an expectation that the government exists to help them. Yeah. My view is the government exists to provide you law and order and defence and nothing else. That's my view. Now, most people disagree with that, and I'm fully used to most people disagreeing with me on things like that. But
yeah, fair enough, mate. Everyone disagrees with me on everything too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we do now, and it's why you see in the media, you see anytime that something goes on, you have a moral panic. Some of the government has to rush to the rescue of whatever the latest thing is, whether it's cladding on buildings in Melbourne, we need regulation, you know. Some guy gets ripped off because he takes a loan for $500,000 to buy a stupid pie shop, so we need a banking royal commission. You know, whatever it is, the government feels they have to run to deal with the latest crisis. So the political reality is, again, that a UBI is never going to work. It's just never going to work. It's a magical pudding that will work in a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world.
Well, in playing devil's advocate, one would say, a leftist or the shooter of the El Paso shooting would say something to the effect of perhaps that you're not paying people to do nothing because it's a fixed income for that particular allocated job. So how would you respond to that?
So you're saying, like, what, have differentiated pay rates based on jobs, on whatever you're doing? So if I'm a street sweeper, I get a different amount to if I'm a doctor. Is that what you...
Yes, but it'd be fixed for the rate that's below. So anyone maybe under the age of I don't know 25 would get a certain amount, and then beyond that, and I would say that it's a fixed rate among each industry. A surgeon, even though it's a fixed rate, a surgeon wouldn't get what a street sweeper gets, but it's still a fixed rate.
Isn't that just pure communism? Isn't that just Cuba? You know, we're going to make you a surgeon, and we're going to make you a school teacher, and we're going to make you a gymnast, and we're going to make you a street sweeper, and you're going to receive X amount, and that's how it works.
Well, the thing is, though, they still get to choose what job they want to fall into. They just don't get to choose the payment.
Oh, okay, right. So if you don't have the intelligence to be a surgeon, you get to choose you want to be a surgeon because it's got a higher UBI. Like, you see, it's just so many.
No, I get it. I was trying to bring forth their argument, but I can't really. Yeah.
But you see, this is the thing. The minute you get one of these systems, you automatically have identified the inequity in the system, which is you're not incentivising anyone to work. You're not incentivising anyone to do dangerous work. You're not incentivising anyone to do work that requires a level of skill. So you therefore suddenly have to come up with a new pay scale for those people. Before you know it, you're back in a highly regulated system with all sorts of different differentiated rates. The only difference is the market allows that to occur and always has allowed that to occur. But what you've done now is you've substituted the government for the market. And that is pure communism. That's North Korea. That's Cuba. That's Soviet Union.
I've been to Korea. Well, South Korea.
South. You haven't been to North, though.
No. No.
I like the idea of danger tourism. I'd love to go to places like that.
There is a tour that one can do to go to North Korea. It's a strict tour, but you can only go where they tell you, and it's like not like going to, like, I don't know, England or something.
Didn't that Australian guy just get thrown in jail on one of those tours?
Oh, I don't know. Really?
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks ago. He got released. Yeah.
Oh,
and he was a communist academic. And the irony, he got thrown in jail by a communist regime. Yeah.
Well, he got to live in the heaven he wanted in, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, his pain sustains me.
I'm glad to hear it. Someone in the chat wrote that a UBI was tried and scrapped in Scandinavia. That's from
Denmark.
Peter V. Well, someone said Finland, and someone else and you're saying Denmark. I've been to Denmark. They call it the happiest place on earth. Well, that's what they call themselves.
Isn't that Disneyland? The happiest place on earth?
No, that is Disneyland. But in terms of countries, Denmark is one of the happiest places ever because you have free education because all of the taxes go back. It's not a communist system, Denmark, at all. But everything goes back into like schooling and that. And people did a referendum actually to they had the choice to give up to not give up part of so much of their pay packet, but they still chose to continue doing it because they like their quality of life.
Yeah, but you know, it's a very homogenized, racially homogenized place as well.
I know, I've been there. It's very, very white. You'd love it.
Well, hang on, I'm not a racist person. It's what I'm saying is that, and this is PJ O'Rourke's argument from 20 years ago, is that you can get away with more welfare in racially homogenized places because your neighbors look like you. Yeah. Right? The minute you have, and you know, the minute you're a white guy and you've got a black neighbor, or you're a black guy and you've got a white neighbor, you don't feel as well as wanting to hand over money to the government so that guy can not work and live off your taxes, right? It's not a racist thing. It's just you don't identify with your neighbours, right?
No, I agree. I don't. I'm one of those people who doesn't automatically think if you're a nationalist you must be a racist.
Yeah.
Well, you do. You just said, well, I'm not a racist.
No, you have to, but you always have to preface that, because if you say anything like that these days, people are going to assume that you've got some racial undertone. Unless you're of the left, you can be as racist as you want on the left.
Well, it's okay. It's okay for black people to want segregated dorm rooms and segregated university because it's because they don't want to be around white people because of all the injustices.
Well, I know this is a favourite topic of yours. I'm always happy to talk about abortion. You know how Planned Parenthood started?
I do know how Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger wanted to eliminate black people.
I know this.
It's a paragon of the left.
And she was actually a very big supporter of Adolf and the Nazi regime. And a lot of people don't talk about that. I'm working on. I'm not working on. I've already worked on it. I have this huge article that I wrote, and I've given it to someone to shop it around, and it mentions Margaret Sanger and her evil racist agenda, but Planned Parenthood and many on the left praise her as a hero, even though she was very much a supporter of eugenics. Now, my issue with eugenics, it's funny because, I mean, you should have an issue with eugenics, generally speaking, but eugenics is something that started off on the left, but now people on the far right also are very much for it. They believe that if you have Down syndrome or some form of disability, that human being doesn't deserve to live because they wouldn't have much of a quality of life. But a lot of people have like cerebral palsy and MS and other things, and they have pretty normal, great quality of life. Like, who are we to judge what a good or bad quality of life is in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, but don't forget, the far right is the left, right?
Oh, I know that. They're a little bit better, but I do know that. What bothers me is just that I try really hard. I try really, really hard not to please them, because I don't really care either way, but I try and see what they're trying to say to see if any of it makes sense to me. And I don't, as I said a moment ago, I don't think just because you believe in ethno-nationalism, while I'm not on that bandwagon, I don't assume that someone who is an ethno-nationalist is automatically a racist. Now, if you are a white supremacist and you think the white race is better than everyone else in every way, then that is racist. But if you believe that each race has its own positives and negatives, for example, like, the dude that kept winning all the races in the Olympics, Bolton or something, Usain Bolt, that's it.
Usain
Bolt, yeah. Sorry.
Barack Hussein Obama, but Usain Bolt.
Oh yeah, Usain Bolt. It's implied, or it's common knowledge that if you are black, you are an athlete, you are fantastic at your sport. Yeah, and if you are a white society or a white person or whatever, you have intelligence, in colonization and I know that sounds.
The first thing you went to is what you're good at because you're white. You can colonize people.
No, I should have said settled the land. The infrastructure, that kind of stuff. Well, can you deny that Western societies have been more successful? I don't come from South America, I was born here, but Latin American societies do not do well. Like, there's not been a single Latin American society that's been on par with a Western society.
But I don't think that's a racial thing. I think it's coincidence that... It's
a lot of coincidences. The Japanese do well.
No, it comes from the culture that those people have racially come out of.
But Latin Americans are all predominantly Catholic, and Europe is relatively Catholic.
Only in the last 20 or 30 years, the English-speaking cultures have come out of the English Enlightenment, which was a Protestant movement, and that has imbued. And the fruit of that is being reaped by the world at the moment.
Yeah, now everyone's going to think I'm for colonisation, and I'm not.
Well, it's another story. I'm not. We don't need to go there in this.
No, we won't go there. But yeah, that was. Keep going. I like.
No. There's a reason why those movements succeeded in certain places, and different colonizations failed in other places. It's not because of the people were black or brown or white or yellow. It's because of the culture that they brought with them and the underpinnings that came with that culture.
But that is their culture. that's what they have derived. That's how it's
sure,
originated.
Sure. But for whatever reason, Protestantism didn't take root in sub-Saharan Africa until after colonisation. It didn't emerge from out of there. So it's not like, you had guys from Ghana sailing around the world, planting colonies and sharing the gospel around, right?
Sure.
It's a quirk of history. That's how it happened.
Sure.
But I wouldn't argue it's because white people. I'd argue it's because English Enlightenment. That's the argument I would put on.
The Enlightenment, sure, but then a lot of people talk about the bell curve.
Explain what you mean in that respect.
The bell curve is a study that was done on every single racial group, and it found that the Jews and the whites and the Asians are at the top, and that everyone else, like my people, are towards the bottom.
Well, what do you mean in terms of what? What, intelligence?
Intelligence.
Well, I've not seen that.
No, fair enough. Well,
I don't necessarily believe that on average black people are any dumber than white people. I don't think that's.
I think that my issue with those sorts of things is that there's different levels of intelligence with different types of things. Like, just because that's the measure that a white Western society places, that doesn't mean that that's the only kind of intelligence that exists.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's my example for. In defense of all the other groups, all the other ethnic groups.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What about the fact that you consider yourself what specifically? Just a conservative? How do you identify?
I'm happy with either the term conservative or libertarian. Depends what you mean by that. Most of the people that you and I know who call themselves libertarians, I mean, I wouldn't identify with anything that they stand for. They're the sort of people who go to like Rainforest or
like
Burning
Dean McRae.
Dean
McRae, you're evil, Dean.
They're the sort of guys that I'd never hang out with most of those guys. But if that's how you define libertarianism, which is I think more libertinism, then that's not me. And if your definition of conservative is Donald Trump or Tony Abbott, then that's not me either. But I'm happy with any of the labels. It just depends on what you mean by them.
Well, a libertarian, many of them are quite split because many of them are for euthanasia and many of them are not. Many of them are for abortion and many of them are not. It seems to be that they can't really, within the party itself, not within the party, but within the movement itself, really make up their minds on that. It's like two separate factions within the same title of libertarian. And that's fine. It means that there's a broad variety of thinking, so that's not a bad thing. But it also means that there doesn't seem to be anything that really unites them, except for the common denominator being that you do you and I'll do me. And no, I won't invade in your space and you won't invade in my space. And that is, I suppose, an admirable trait. Not one that I agree with in its entirety, because if I could stop someone from hurting themselves, I would.
Well, I completely agree. You do you and I do me. I don't really have a problem with that.
No, I don't.
The problem is abortion, for example, is you are hurting someone else. So
exactly.
So yeah, and that's probably an easy. That's why I don't mind the libertarian tag, because if it just means that, live your life and leave me alone, I'm totally cool with that, totally down with that. And if conservative means economically liberal but socially conservative, if you understand that there's restraints, there's social responsibilities, then again, I'm cool with that. But it really depends on what you mean by the tags. As I said at the start, I don't think there should be any government regulation with the exception of law and order and justice and a defence force. So, I mean, that's,
Tammy Candy, she's a well-known libertarian. You met her?
Yeah, I met Tammy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so she's a friend of mine and she was recently on my channel and she argued that abortion could be placed under property rights as well, and that you are essentially going... but the property rights being that you are invading the property rights of the baby. And that in itself, I thought was quite a smart argument. And a very legal perspective, I'd never heard that before. What do you think of that?
In other words, what? That the baby is the property of the mother? Is that what you're arguing?
No, that the womb is where the baby lives, And
Yes.
so you are invading that baby's space by attempting to abort it.
Well, of course.
That's how I understood it. I don't want to misrepresent her point, but I thought that was really smart. I had never thought of it as property rights. Like, that's quite smart, I thought.
Well, what about simply the right to life? I mean,
Well,
do we really need to go to property rights?
No, we don't. We don't.
Yeah.
But if for those who are not Christians, like you and I are both Christians, so we would always just say the right to life, right to life. But then others who are not Christian would say, oh, well, when does the life really begin? Because, you know, it's not sentient until this point, and it's not, and its heartbeat doesn't beat until this point. Like, there's so many convoluted factors.
You don't need to be a Christian, though, to understand that it's a human life from the moment of conception. I mean, what does it grow into? Does it grow into anything other than a human life? Does it become a frog? Does it become a chicken?
A giraffe?
No, it becomes anything except a human being.
Yeah.
But because it is a human being from the moment of conception. It's a logical fallacy to look at it in any other way.
Yeah.
So what if it doesn't have a heartbeat till 6 weeks? How does having a heartbeat a definition of being a human being any more than having 5 fingers or 4 toes or whatever the case may be? You're just not fully formed, that's all. Well, I'm not fully formed the moment I'm born. So if you're going to go down the route of, well, you're not fully formed, then why can't... And this is why I have a lot of respect for Peter Singer, right? At least he's honest about his argument. He says that parents should be entitled to kill their children any time before the age of 18. And then, once someone is over the age of 70, their children should be entitled to put them down, right? Well, at least he's honest.
Yeah,
at least he's honest about it. That's the logical end point.
But you're right, at least he's honest.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Do you mind moving a little bit that way? Yeah, there, stay there. That's better, thank you. Yeah, so, well, look, abortion and euthanasia are the two things that the libertarian movement seem to be torn on. Whereas conservatives, for the most part, while they're not a monolith the way the left is, there is a broad church as well. Most of us do agree that being pro-abortion or the way the left is just vile. Like, most would argue against a late-term abortion for sure. And you have 4 children, so, like, you would know that more than anyone.
Well, see, again, I'm consistent here, is if you're going to be for abortion, what difference does it make at what term? Why is there a difference between an 8-week-old fetus or an 8-month-old fetus? What's the difference?
Yeah. Well,
you know,
in my view, there is none, except that, like, one is easier to get rid of than the other.
Yeah, that's right. That's the only difference, you know, and you feel more of attachment. The bigger it gets, the more of an attachment you feel to it. So, you know, it gets harder for them, I suppose, to do that. But hey, you know.
Definitely. Yeah. So how do you parallel conservatism with libertarianism? Like, obviously we consider ourselves to a degree to be soft libertarian, but conservatism is the title that we have chosen for ourselves. Why does that fit you better?
Again, it comes to that definition. If you see libertarian and most people who identify it as are really libertine, then, you know, people choose other labels in which to be identified as. But I mean, I don't really care. I don't really care what term you want to use for it. I'm happy to use classical
leftist.
Well, I don't care. You can call me whatever you want. At the end of the day, what matters is what you stand for. And I've been, hey, by the way, I was called plenty of leftist 2 years ago because I opposed Donald Trump. Not because I supported Hillary Clinton, but I didn't think either of them were worth getting elected to the presidency.
I don't like Trump either.
Trump has surprised in some ways. He's been better than I expected in some ways. But I think if you want to call it the conservative movement, is going to pay a long-term price from having Donald Trump.
Do you really think that still?
Yeah, he's trashing a lot of norms. He's thrown out the window any claim that our side had to at least having moral standards.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you think that Donald Trump represents anything good and proper and wholesome?
Well, he's pro-life, and he's got a lot of Supreme Justices who are pro-life. That's pretty amazing.
Kavanaugh has yet to prove that he's a conservative on any topic whatsoever.
Does it matter what Kavanaugh is as long as they are doing pro-life things?
Well, they didn't. Didn't you see a couple of weeks ago? They knocked back a pro-life decision from one of the lower courts. They said they wouldn't deal with it.
Is that the first time that's happened?
You mean under the current court?
Yeah, because...
Yes. They didn't take any cases. One came before them, and Kavanaugh and Roberts refused to take it. They sent it back.
But it's been 4 years, and all they've done is further the pro-life cause for the better.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's a good thing.
I'm sorry, I confused myself there. Tell me in what way the Supreme Court has furthered the pro-life cause?
In what way? Well, it's gotten more attention than ever, and also the vice president is one of the few, actually the only presidential candidate to have walked in a march, and I thought that Trump had put in Supreme Court justices that were in favour of being pro-life, so that somehow trickled into the judicial system. Didn't he take money away from Planned Parenthood or
He
make
promised to, and he didn't do it. He funded them. Trump is a lot of smokescreen. Trump is a lot of smokescreen, a lot of talk.
Really? Okay.
But look at the wall, right? He's making a big issue right now about the wall. He had control of the House and the Senate for 2 whole years.
Yeah.
He could have funded the wall at any time.
But he hasn't. No, that's true. He hasn't made the wall.
Right? He's a lot of talk. He panders to his base on things that he knows he doesn't need to deliver upon. Yes, he's been good on Supreme Court justices. I'm not going to dispute that. He's been good on tax. He's generally been relatively good on immigration. I won't dispute that. He's been terrible on trade. He's been terrible on he simply trashed the image of his office, the United States, the whole conservative movement, the way he behaves, the personal attacks all day on Twitter on people. It's fun. It's definitely fun to watch, but it's not. I don't think it does anything for us.
Well, look, I won't debate it with you simply because you're obviously far more informed on the specifics of Trump. Like, someone can say, oh, I love Trump, whatever, but then they might not know, like me, the fine-tuned details of it all.
Sure, and I'm not across all of it either.
No, but you obviously know more than I do, and I was giving Trump credit because I think people think I love Trump, or that I've always loved him. I do love him, but he was not my pick. I wanted it to be Ben Carson or Carly Fiorina. Those are my two.
I'm Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz. I like Ted Cruz. He's Latino. No, I actually really like him. That's not why I like him. But I've seen him debate Bernie Sanders about I forgot the subject, but it was a really good debate. And he thrashed Bernie Sanders easily. Like, he's really smart. He's got all of his he understands money, he understands the economy. He's really, really smart. So my pick were the two I mentioned. You liked Ted Cruz, but we got Trump. And so when it became Trump versus Hillary, I was like, well, Hillary is a satanic, evil, borderless person. Of course, I'm going to go for Trump. And you say he hasn't delivered on a lot of his promises, but he also has. Like, he said he would move the embassy, and he did move the embassy to Jerusalem.
Yeah, sure.
He's been strict with immigration, as you admitted, and so he's done a lot. And he also, from what I read, wants to help the Christians in Syria. I don't know if he's done anything to further that, but that would be fantastic if he did.
I'm going to be controversial here.
Go ahead.
Christians in Syria, who are they?
I don't know, the ones being murdered by the Muslims?
But who? I
don't know.
They're a chimera. They don't exist.
There are no Christians in Syria.
Well, you got to remember too, there's a lot of people who call themselves Christians in that part of the world who are actually Nestorians. Now, I don't want to get into theological debate right now, but it's not Christian. It's as Christian as Mormonism is.
I have a couple of Mormon friends. Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that doesn't mean
that
that doesn't mean they should be killed, by the way.
No, but you're saying that it's a fantasy that there's Christians in Syria?
I'm not saying that there's none. I'm not saying there's none. I'm just saying that there's this humongous group of Christians in Syria. I don't know who they are.
Well, just because you don't know who they are doesn't mean anything. I don't know anything about physics, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
Well, that's a good point. We are. It's a good point. But by the way, if you want to get involved, in Syria, you've got to have a better argument than we have to save 5 Christians.
No, true. Right? But I think his point was the Middle East. Like, for example, when I'm not in the mood of doing politics and writing all my essays for my courses and stuff like that, I like to tune out and watch a movie. Sometimes I like to watch a feel-good story. Sometimes those feel-good stories are about Muslims who have become Christians, and how they end up becoming they end up being imprisoned, but essentially for a thought crime. But then they find Jesus and salvation, and then their whole family becomes Christian. It's a nice feel-good story that makes you feel good, before you go to bed or something. There are Christians in the Middle East being murdered and persecuted. Like, we complain here in Australia about how bad it is for Christians here, or how bad it's getting, but it's truly worse over there. So don't you think if Trump wants to help them, that's a good thing?
I don't believe we should be getting involved in anyone else's wars, regardless of whether it's Muslims, Christians, Zoroastrians.
But then how... Okay, that's fair. I actually agree with that, to be honest. But then the tiny little part of me thinks, how can we just let these Christians be murdered?
How can we let Muslims be murdered? How can we let Zoroastrians be murdered? We can't fight every war. We can't get involved in everyone else's fight.
No, that's true. And the Muslims being murdered are being murdered. It's like, yeah, you're right. Like, why do I just single out Christians? I suppose that's a good point. But
I understand it. It's a natural feeling of kinship. I get that. I'm not saying you're wrong to have
but
a
you're starting to sound like a
time.
cold-hearted dictator. No, I'm kidding.
But you have to draw the line somewhere.
Of course, I actually agree with you to a degree. Yeah.
We've talked a lot of topics tonight. Now we're talking foreign policy, right?
Oh, I love it. It's a very discussion. It's good. Keep going.
If we're going to use scarce resources, which they are, your military is scarce resources, and you're putting human lives at risk.
Yeah.
There has to be a real geopolitical strategic reason to be doing so.
Sure.
Right? It's like so if New Zealand was to be invaded for whatever reason. Sure. It's in Australia's security interest to get involved in that. That's a fight I would say you have to get involved in. They're our neighbour. You don't want to have, for example, China with a major military base sitting, on your doorstep.
Do we really want to help Jacinda Ardern? Really? No, no kidding.
I wouldn't be coming to her rescue. Right?
Yeah.
But you see my point, right? But what strategic interest do we have in Libya? We don't have one.
No, we don't. That's true.
What strategic interest do we have in Georgia?
Yeah.
Where I'm talking about Georgia in the United States, the one in Europe.
I knew what you meant.
There's no for Australia anyway. And if I'm an American too, why would I want to see my money spent on some far-flung country that I don't have any interest in? Let them fight their own fights.
Yeah. That's true. I agree. That's true. America
in all seriousness, one of the most successful post-war stories of the last 30 years has been Rwanda. And it was heavily criticised at the time because in the wake of the Somalia debacle, Clinton didn't want to get involved in Rwanda, and they stood back and they watched. And it was a slaughter. And it doesn't make it good. It doesn't make it right.
No, of course
there were millions of people ethnically slaughtered, right? But they fought their own fight. They sorted themselves out. And the country is stable and it's peaceful. And it's actually doing very, very well by sub-Saharan African standards. Right? Let countries sort themselves out. Let them go for it. Yeah. So what if they go on? I mean, I'm not saying they should. We shouldn't want to see them have wars. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But it's not our responsibility.
Okay. Well, what about the subject of? I was going to bring it up. What was it? Crap, I lost it. It was something that we were supposed to talk about. We were on the phone before talking about it. That we would bring it up. What was it? Oh, gun.
Oh, gosh. You want to go there?
Yeah, okay. I do. We have a little bit of time left because I stuffed up with the thing, so we'll just... Okay, so...
It's a very broad-ranging conversation, isn't it?
It is today. It usually goes up and down anyway. But you're so learned, you're so intelligent, and you know so much stuff, and so it's good to pick your brain.
Or talk a lot of crap. Put it that way.
No, I like it, and I'm actually really sad that I didn't watch you speak at Friedemann when I could have seen you. You said you saw me in the audience.
I saw you on the boat, actually.
Oh, you saw me on the... Oh, you were on the boat with me.
Yeah.
Oh, how come you didn't come and say hello?
There was like 1,000 people on the boat.
I don't care. I should have stood out to you. I was having a boogie with Jacinta Price.
Oh, right. See, I didn't even see her on the boat. That tells you how many people there were.
Well, she ended up on my channel because I networked like crazy at that event. And I'm really sad. I'm really jealous that you'll be at CPAC this weekend because I was meant to go. But I won't make
Why can't you go to CPAC? What's that mean?
Money.
Oh, money. All right.
Yeah.
I thought it was like you're holding mistletoe over your head or something. I couldn't work out what you were doing. Yeah, okay. Right.
Yeah. Do you want to pay for me? No, kidding. All right, so let's talk about...
We should start a GoFundMe for you.
Oh, yeah, for 2 days' time. No, it's fine. I'll come to the next one. Maybe the next one you and I will be speaking. Wouldn't that be fun?
There might not be a next one. Who knows? You never know with these things.
That's true. There might not be one. But it would be cool to see...
Christina Keneally wants to shut us down.
Yeah, I know, right? What a loser. And then did you see what Penny Wong said?
No, what did Penny Wong say?
Penny Wong said that anyone that participates, or something to the effect of anyone that participates or joins or is a speaker at CPAC is basically an extremist. And so then, yeah.
I'm happy to be an extremist.
Yeah, under her logic. And then so Daisy Cousins responded saying, how is Nigel Farage and myself extremist, please explain. And then I added to it, and so then I think Daisy Cousins retweeted me, so it was really funny. Like, oh no, she liked it because I wrote the same thing. I essentially said, how are these people even in any way, shape, or form extremists? Just because you think that they're against you as a human being, that must make them, technically extremists. It's so weird, the stretches that these people make. It's like, if Trump says Baltimore has rats, you hate black people. Like, the stretches, do you know what I mean? That's what the left does. They do these weird stretches that make no sense at all.
Well, the deplatforming, by calling you an extremist, it's a way of attempting to completely discredit anything you have to say.
Yeah.
And, that's fine, whatever. It'll burn itself out.
Exactly. But you're right, there might not be another CPAC. I hope there is, because if it was an annual event, that would be great. I wish that there were more conferences held in Melbourne, though. They're always up there in your end.
Well, we are the premier state.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So you want to talk about gun laws?
I think it's interesting because everyone, stupidly, Americans included, and the Australian public, as well-meaning as they are, compare all the time American gun laws to Australian gun laws. You cannot do that, people of the public. It makes no sense because Australia was not founded on the exact same principles as the Americans. Obviously we know that, but did you want to talk a bit about what you know and why you think it is that that these shootings continue to happen? But before you state that, I just want to say to the people watching who are aware or not aware, America, as many gun massacres that you guys think that it has, it is nothing. It's actually like in the top 50 of countries that have massacres. Number one, I think, is South Africa. So it's just not advertised. So all right, keep going.
This is definitely not my area of expertise.
No, I know, but we were talking about it off camera, and I thought it was really interesting.
We talked about libertarianism.
We've spoken about everything. Yeah.
Right, and I do what I want to do. From that perspective, if you want to have AK-47s under your bed, as far as I'm concerned, what do I care? As a general starting principle, right? Yeah. That's my general view. I'm glad that Australia doesn't have the gun culture that the United States has. It comes from a cultural background and all that sort of stuff. And I'm glad we don't have it. But having said that, if I'm the United States, you've got something like 350 million weapons now owned. I think that's what they know legally. There's probably more than that. How do you change it? What do you do? Do you think banning gun? What are you going to do? Just ban AK-47s? Are you going to ban all weapons? What do you do? How do you get them off people? You're never going to get them off people. So I don't understand what anyone thinks they're going to achieve by attempting to introduce or enforce gun laws. By all means, I don't understand why they give out guns to people who have mental illnesses or have criminal records. I know that there's state-by-state legislation and
I disagree with you already.
There's some complications to it. There's got to be some level of restrictions. We don't need bazookas under our beds. We don't need tanks. I get that. I'm not. I have no problem with any of that. But as a general rule, why can't people have weapons? As a general rule.
I agree with that, but I don't agree with your mental illness part because I get anxiety sometimes.
But that's not mental illness.
Okay, but the point is that someone with mental illness isn't automatically a danger to someone else. It depends on the illness, I suppose. But
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Schizophrenia or yeah. I'm not saying that someone with depression, should be automatically banned from having a gun. Because how do you diagnose those things or decide? I suppose. But But see, this is one of the changes too. Until 40 years ago, we used to lock people up who had serious mental illness problems, right?
Sure.
They used to go into asylums, right? And used to stay there because you're a nutter, right? Now we let them out in the street. So I don't know if that's got anything to do with it. I don't know. But have you noticed too? And maybe it's just correlation rather than causation. Okay. Have you noticed that serial killers have disappeared at the same time that mass shootings have started?
Oh my gosh! No, I haven't.
It's been noticed by a few sociologists in the United States.
Yeah.
And because it's almost always male. The serial killers are almost always male. The mass shooters are almost always male, right? There's something about that. There's something about lunatics going out and doing stuff. Now, if you really want to get a gun, I know here in Australia.
You can buy a 3D printer and make a gun.
Well, that's one point. But if I want to go out there tomorrow and buy a weapon here in Australia, I know where to get one. Illegally. I know where to get one.
Tell me off camera. No, kidding.
Well, no, I'm an officer of the court. Yeah? I could not do such a thing.
I know. I was just joking.
So do you think that laws in the US are going to stop people from getting them when they're so widespread? What do they hope to achieve by it? And then the simple reality is, I have as much chance as a white male of being shot to death in the United States as I do in Australia or in England or in Canada or in New Zealand. I have as much chance as a white male. That's a simple reality.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
One of the major differences between Australia and the United States is we have different demographics. It's a simple reality, right? Yes, there's more mass shootings over there, but there's also 15 times as many people.
Yes,
so
exactly.
the chances of dying in a mass shooting is something infinitesimally small. Now, it doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it should be allowed.
No.
But maybe, I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. I don't know really why people go and want to do mass shootings. I really don't understand it. But does banning AK-47 stop that? I'm not sure it does.
No. Well, I am actually going to bring on a guest soon who has done research and books on this. His name is Oscar. But well, I think but do you agree with me that comparing the United States and Australia just makes no sense because they...
To a degree.
Well, because you said it, that the culture is different completely. Australia doesn't have the same culture of guns and ownership as the United States does. So whilst it would be great if Australian men and women could defend themselves and be armed to a degree, at the same time, that was never really written in our constitution. So it's not really something that the gun buyback wasn't really, the confiscation wasn't really, whilst it was controversial at the time, I assume, it seemed like the Australian people were very submissive to it.
There was a degree of pushback, particularly by some people in the country. Do you know that there's more illegal weapons on the street today than were ever taken in the gun buyback?
I do know that.
Do you know that half of the guns in the gun, well, maybe it's not half, a lot of the guns in the buyback ended up back out in the street. The cops were selling them. Dodgy cops were selling them back out in the street.
And there's also more knife attacks, and like a lot of other types of crimes have gone up. So yes, it's true that shootings of more than 3 people have gone down. That's true. But other violences and crimes, and you're right, other guns are still in the market, and it's all back out there again. So what difference does it really make? And
generally crime rates have been falling now for the last 20, 30 years anyway.
Falling.
All around Australia, the United States, England. I'm not talking like cybercrime, but violent crime has fallen rapidly.
I didn't know that. I would think it's the opposite. I actually sort of was correlating immigration to more, and it probably sounds bad to say this, but I'm being honest. I thought that with the influx of turbocharged immigration, that actually our crimes have gone up.
Crime as a whole, not my area of expertise. I'm not a criminologist.
No.
There have been a number of crime areas that have rapidly escalated as far as I'm aware. Things like cybercrime, it's definitely gone up. Fraud, those kind of things have definitely increased in the last 30 years.
Stuff.
But car theft, burglaries, they've almost vanished. They've almost completely vanished.
Interesting.
Yeah, stuff like that. And as far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong, as far as I'm aware, crimes against person, that's, assaults, murders, rapes, those sort of things have been falling fairly steadily now for the last 20 or 30 years, as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong. Happy to be corrected.
I think you're wrong, but I'm not going to say that you are because you would know more than me.
Happy to be corrected. It's not my area of expertise.
No. Yeah, I did not think that at all. Because we are often told even to not walk outside at a certain time because of fear of certain gangs and all that kind of stuff. I hope you're right. I would love to be wrong on this. I don't. I think that it'd be great to know that was a fact.
Oh, it might be. Look, I can't think of anywhere I've ever been in Australia where I felt in fear of safety for myself. It might just be because, you're a woman that you automatically feel a little bit more insecure in certain places.
For sure. Just walking to my car after, leaving my friends, and then, yeah, and I'm not one of those people that assumes all men are rapists or anything like that, but you can't help. No,
We aren't?
Apparently.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But apparently, yeah, I don't assume that at all, but I am always, because I am by myself, I'm singular, I'm not plural, I'm not walking with someone, so when you walk back to your car to go home or whatever it may be, and also in Victoria, the laws are quite different here. We're not even allowed to have pepper spray, we're not even allowed to use a walking stick to defend ourselves. We're not allowed. Yeah, I'm not, I promise.
But how would they stop you from using a walking stick to defend yourself? Like what? You get arrested for carrying a walking stick?
I suppose you could get sued for being armed and ready or something. I don't know. But my only, if I was walking around with a knife, I could be the one faulted in a court case. They'd be like, well, she had a knife on her and all he wanted to do was penetrate her. The two cancel each other out or something like that. I don't know. But I think if I ever have, girls or children, I'll tell them to walk around with antiperspirant or something so you can spray that in people's eyes. I don't know. It's we need to be armed to some capacity to be able to protect ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've got no opposition to that as a general rule. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Well, we've covered a lovely variety of subjects, and is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Let me see if there's anything that we're missing. Hang on. Industrial reform, fixing the economy. Yeah, I think we've discussed everything we wanted to. Do you have any thoughts on the Australian economy and how would you suggest we could improve it?
Well, wow.
Just because you do that kind of law to a degree.
Look, I'm not an economist.
I know that. Yeah.
I do have strongly held beliefs in this area.
Sure.
I would just abolish regulation. Just start. I mean, there's so many reams of it. It's a bit like how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. Just start and start abolishing regulation that doesn't need to be there. Why do we need half of the things that we have governing us? Why do we need 50,000 pages of income tax legislation? Why do we need 1,500 pages of industrial regulation? Why do we need award wages? Why do we need minimum wages? Why does someone need to approve our enterprise agreements? Why can't an employer and employee just come to an agreement together? You don't enter into an agreement because you don't want the agreement, right? You enter it in because you voluntarily bargained to enter into it. There's just so many copious reams of this stuff. Why do we need tariffs? Why do we need them at all? There's still tariffs on cars in Australia, right? We don't manufacture cars in Australia anymore. Why right?
Well, we should start manufacturing cars again. It would definitely bring forth more jobs again.
I'm not a supporter of industry policy at all. Not at all.
Okay.
You get the government out of it, and then things naturally prop up, right?
Okay.
30 years ago, we didn't have a wine industry in Australia in a substantial way. That exists today. It wasn't because the government got involved in it. It just happened. There was enterprising people. They got in. They did stuff. The mining industry didn't exist in Australia, in Western Australia, 50 years ago. It's now the biggest iron ore deposit in Australia, in the world, is in the northwest. The government had nothing to do with it. The government never ever gets anything done. You just get it out of the way. No, it doesn't. Yeah, you get it out of the way, and that's how you improve the economy. You liberate people to do, because I trust you better with your money than I trust the government with your money, and that goes for everyone.
So government should be completely limited as much as possible.
It shouldn't do anything except law and order and defence.
I agree.
Nothing else. It has no other role.
Stay out of transgenderism, stay out of religion, stay out of marriage, stay out of all of that, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, so I don't understand the need for a Marriage Act. So let's go there. Let's talk about that one.
Please! Right? Oh my God, this is fun!
Let's talk about that,
I'm having so much fun with you, Kyle. Kutasi.
Well, let's go there, right? You had all these people like Tim Wilson who you know, because he's gay, wanted to marry his boyfriend. Okay, you could have at any time
civil union.
You could have at any time. Well, not even civil union. There's churches that will marry you. Would have done it before. I wouldn't call them Christian. They might call themselves Christian. But you could have walked. There were many churches you could have walked into, and they would have conducted a marriage ceremony, and you could have gone around and you could have called him your husband and whatever. Right?
Sure.
That's fine. Why do you need a piece of paper? Why does any of us need a piece of paper from the government to say that we're married?
I know why. The argument would be that they don't. If one of them dies, the other one might not get the inherited fortune.
But you already have de facto laws that allow for that. You already have.
Okay. So then I'm wrong. All right.
You have a succession act in every state in Australia that allows for and recognises de facto couples, whether they're straight, gay, bisexual, transgender, whatever, recognises those type of situations. We don't need a Marriage Act. So my argument was to Tim Wilson. I told him this personally. I said, if you're a true libertarian, you would have abolished the Marriage Act. That's how you would have dealt with it, right? And you know why? You know why they didn't want to abolish the Marriage Act? They wanted to change the Marriage Act because it was about public recognition of gay marriages. That's what it was about. By having it passed as law, then you are saying this is what the government supports. It thinks it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's not, this marriage equality stuff is nonsense. If it's marriage equality, why can't I marry my sister?
Exactly.
That's marriage equality, right?
No, exactly. That's true.
Why can't I marry 6 people at once?
Or like a 4-year-old.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, their argument to that would be a 4-year-old can't consent. That's what their argument to that would be.
She can say, I want to marry him. There you go, she's done.
That would be their argument, right? Yeah. They'd go down that road. And the same would be the argument against bestiality. Would be, well, a dog can't consent, right? Sure. But where do you get the standard that someone has to consent to something? Where do you get that from?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You see, it's anyway. So you managed to trigger me again on a topic right as we were winding up. I do apologise.
No, I love that you got triggered. But wait, on marriage, I was talking to a friend of mine. I'll be interviewing her next week. She's a transgendered conservative. She'll be on my channel next week. Her name is Dana Pham. Do you know
Dana
her?
Pham is a man. It's not a she. It's a he.
Okay, well, she's my friend, so out of pure...
He is your friend.
No, please stop.
Well, why?
Do you know her?
I've met him, yes.
Stop it. Anyway, she'll be on my channel next week.
He will be on your channel next week.
Long story short, Dana, let's just use the name. Dana, or Dana, Dana prefers it Dana, not Dana, from what I've heard. So Dana said to me something that I didn't realise, and that's basically that in the Bible, marriage is not referred to as a contract, but a covenant. So, by that logic, why don't we let gay people have the gay contract of marriage, and then we will upgrade to the covenant? I thought that was really smart. What do you reckon about that?
Well, the Bible also says that God made them man and woman. So
okay, this isn't about Dana. Stop it.
Dana as a man. Dana is a man.
It's irrelevant to my discussion. The point was that I wanted to give credit to the individual that made me realize that point. That's all.
Well, yeah, it is. Well, how do you define? What's the difference between a covenant and a contract?
A contract is like a piece of paper that you sign, whereas a covenant, I think, is more, I don't know, godly? I don't know.
The difference is a contract can be terminated. That's the difference. A contract can be terminated. A covenant can't be terminated except mutually.
Well, then isn't that better?
Yeah, but of course marriage is a covenant from that perspective. It's supposed to be between a man and a woman for life. It can't be terminated.
Sure.
That's the whole point. I do agree. I'm not disputing that. But just like God's covenant to us.
So wait, you agreed with Dana?
But why? But we can. Broken cock is right twice a day.
Don't be mean. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm sure that Dana is solid on a range of issues. It just is that he is very disturbed about his gender. And I mean, you know, I I hope and pray that he wakes up to that one day.
Well, I've made a couple of anti-trans, not anti-trans, because I'm not anti-anyone, but anti-the trans politicization, let's say, videos. And I've sent them to Dana, and Dana essentially agreed with a lot of my views. So that was refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because I didn't want to offend anyone with my videos, so sometimes I send them to someone before it's public, and I say, "What do you think of this? Is this too offensive?" And if it isn't, then I'll release it. Not that I should care anyway, but
No, you should never try to cause offense, but
no, of course not.
You shouldn't worry too much if you do.
Yeah,
I guess.
I'm just polite, I suppose, to a degree. Sometimes I don't care at all. Just before we go, let's talk. Someone in the testimonies someone in the chat wants to hear your testimony, how you came to
my Christian testimony.
Yes.
I love telling this story.
Okay, let's go. I already know it, but I think it's a beautiful story, and I'd love to hear it again. So, go for your life.
So I was raised in, I wouldn't call it a Christian family. Nominally, my father's nominally Catholic. My mum completely openly atheist, and but I went to a Christian school, and I guess you'd say that I had I understood Christian values. I used to call myself a Christian. I would have been offended if you said I wasn't, but the truth is I didn't understand the gospel, and I was very convicted of my sin. I realized I was a very terrible human being. I was aged 34 at the time, and I reached out to a friend of mine in ministry, and I said, look, I need to talk to you. And we went and had a beer, and he said, I've known you. I went to school with him. I went to high school with him. And he said, I've known you for 28 years. I know exactly why you've come to see me. I know exactly what you get up to. And he was right. He was spot on. And he just said, look, you should come to church with me. And I did. I went that Sunday with him. And then I joined a group called Explaining Christianity, which was inside the church, and we're reading Ephesians 2:8, and there's a passage that says you're saved by grace through no action of your own. And I remember I put the hand up and I said, "You mean there's absolutely nothing that I could do to save myself?" And the penny dropped. It literally just dropped like that, and I realised that Jesus had done it all for me, and there was nothing that I could contribute to that process whatsoever, and it's been the best 5 years of my life since.
Oh, that's a good story.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's go to Ephesians 2:8. Here it is. For by grace ye are saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's a
Are you reading the King James there too? Because you said ye.
I was raised on the King James version. I actually don't know how to change it on my phone to the English Standard Version.
That's my preferred version, English ESV. Yeah.
Yeah, I would prefer it, but oh look, I got a text from Dean McRae. What a good matchmaker I am. You and Kyle are killing it.
Dean, you should have to pay him for this.
He should be my agent and just recruiting for me all these great guests. And someone in the chat named Margot wants credit for the fact that she's the one that wanted to hear your testimony because she's a little baby that needs to be heard. So say.
Well, thank you, Margot.
There you go.
Yeah.
I hope you're happy, Margaret. That's funny. All right. Is there anything else you wanna talk about before we knock off?
We could talk for hours.
We could. It's easy.
Yeah,
it's easy with you.
You've got to go to sleep. Get your beauty sleep, and I've got children to put to bed and all that sort of stuff. So, all that. Yeah, jobs to do.
No, it's good. It's good. Well, have fun at CPAC. Let me know how it goes, and
yeah.
Hopefully, I run into you again one day. Maybe one day we'll be on a panel together.
Maybe, yeah.
Make sure you pimp me out to people and say, hey, what about that dear girl? I know she's controversial, but she's got a brain.
I was accused once of pimping someone out, and I sued them and won a defamation case. So
no, I want to be pimped out.
That's another story for another day.
For another time.
Thanks for chat.
That's funny. Oh, just before we go, we won't talk about this in depth, but I will say that because I don't know whether everyone was listening when I said it. Slack Bastard, who is a well-known leftist Australian, has written a hit piece against you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't know
picking
that.
up on other media that was published at the time. Most of the other media has since fallen down on the Google charts, but for some reason the Slack Bastard article remains somewhere towards the top. But if it's who I think it is, all he was doing was republishing media. So I can't be too upset with him.
Fair enough. Are you still like targeted by the left? To this day, as far as you're aware?
I'm not involved really. It depends on what you define as the left. You're talking the big left, you're talking the left within the Liberal Party. Which one?
Not the left in the Liberal Party. I'm talking about
neither really, because I'm just like, I just sort of run my own little law firm these days and my little industrial relations think tank, and I get a few bits and pieces from those guys, particularly union officials. They don't like me, but whatever. I don't care. That doesn't bother me.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. As you heard already, next week I'll have Adana Pham. Transgender conservative Christian is the label she gives herself. I know biologically that's not accurate, and she knows it too, but she's my friend, so I don't want to disrespect her. But anyway, if you guys want to tune in for that would be really good. What am I going to say?
You can't be an unrepentant sinner and claim to be a Christian at the same time.
But I'm a sinner. I sin every day, don't you?
Yep, absolutely.
So then why is there a caveat for a transgendered person?
Because they're unrepentant about it. They believe there's nothing wrong with pretending to be transgender.
I suppose, but that's where we would need to just pray and hope that
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm just merely saying that it's as Christian as Adolf Hitler claiming to be Catholic.
Yeah, I know. What a dickhead. Yeah, very true. Yeah, well, that's the world we live in, unfortunately. False dichotomies. Okay. Well,
I hope that goes well for you.
Well,
I'll be watching.
Yeah, please do promote it. It will be interesting. We'll be together, physically together. So it's the only second interview I've ever done where I'm in the room with someone. So that'll be cool.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's next week.
You won't have to worry about your technology not working.
Exactly. Yeah, but I need to get used to using this program, to be honest. And the funny thing is, actually, after Dana Pham, I'll have Augusta Zimmerman. So
very interesting.
Yeah, I have a good lineup of people. And so that'll be good. I'm really excited for the next 2 weeks. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you want to say?
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It's been fun.
Yay! No, it's been very fun. All right, so let me just go. Hang on, so because I have to do 2 clicks now. So go end stream here.